Well, welcome to another edition of Healthy Cooking with Jay. I am Jay Villar, the Operations, Communications, and Events Manager at New Community Farms, and I am also a nutritional therapist. So every Monday at 1 p.m., I get to be with you and talk to you about healthy cooking, healthy recipes. What are some of the staples that you should be having in your kitchen? Just general philosophies around health and nutrition. And today, I am going to be working with you through a recipe using a vegetable, one of my favorite vegetables these days, which are Brussels sprouts. And I'm going to be showing you two varying recipes. One that you can make on your stovetop, and one that you can make in your oven. So the two recipes that I'm going to be working with are one for folks that are purely vegetarian, and then one for folks that are that also consume meat in their meals. So one of the first things that we're going to do is just give you a little bit of education around Brussels sprouts. So Brussels sprouts are tiny little cabbages. They're part of the mustard family and also known as brassicas. And they are a very hardy vegetable because they keep for a longer time than most brassicas. And the way to keep them is to keep them in a plastic bag, tightened and sealed. Try to get as much air out as you possibly can of the bag, and then simply put it into your refrigerator. And your refrigerator hopefully is a nice cool temperature, and it can last in your fridge for up to 2.5 to 3 weeks. So you don't necessarily have to use them right away, so they pretty much store pretty quickly or pretty easily, and you're good to go. So once you're ready to use your Brussels sprouts, there are a number of ways in which you can prepare them. Multiple recipes that you can find online. If you've been out, you'll notice a lot of appetizers have Brussels sprouts available. And what I'm going to also show you in one of today's recipes is what's the difference between restaurant style Brussels sprouts versus some of the Brussels sprouts that you may have been making in your home. And I'll get to that. So it'll be a little teaser there for you. But without further ado, what I'm going to show you today are, once again, two recipes, one that you make on your stove and one that you can make in your oven. So I'm going to be working with the stove top as well as the oven. So right now I have set my temperature in my oven for 450 degrees. That's 450 degrees, and my oven is currently being preheated. And there's also the baking tray that I'm going to be using to bake the Brussels sprouts already in the oven. So the first recipe that we're going to be working on is preparing our Brussels sprouts for the oven, and why I have the baking sheet in the oven. And this is going to be the vegetarian Brussels sprouts recipe. So I'm going to need to use my cutting board here. And I'm going to switch the angle so you could see what I'm doing and sort of hear me. So hopefully this works. I kind of tested out a little bit earlier. Okay, here we go. All right, so I got my cutting board. I got my Brussels sprouts here. I cut a little bit here before. And these are pre-washed already. So you don't have to do that here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is everyone sort of sees the little notch here. Now you don't want to cut up all the way up high. You want to actually cut as low as you possibly can, and then simply just get that little that little butt off here. And all I'm going to be doing is slicing these in half. So what happens when you slice the Brussels sprout in half is you actually release the available flavor that is going to be available for you in the Brussels sprout. So why Brussels sprouts have had such a bad rap back in the 80s was because how they were cooked. They were cooked whole, and there is a chemical reaction that occurs when you actually cut the Brussels sprout in half and release some of the gases and the juices that are available once the Brussels sprout is sliced. So actually, the more that you slice it, the more varying flavors are going to be available to you. But for purposes of our recipe and just kind of showing you the simplicity of how easy it is to cook it, all I'm going to be doing is cutting these in half. So I'm going to cut just a small sample. So you don't have to watch me make my dinner tonight, but I'll just kind of show you what I'm going to be doing. So I cut these in half. So I'm just going to do sort of a couple of those. Once again, I just get the knife up, just cut a little bit off. I'm going to take a little bit of the leaves, of the loose leaves off, and then cut these in half. As you can see, beautiful little Brussels sprouts there. So yeah, so let me just cut maybe about 5 or so, and then you can kind of see what I'm going to be doing here. And once again, while I'm cutting these, my my oven is set for 450. So why I want the oven so hot is because that is actually the secret to getting your Brussels sprouts as crispy as you possibly can get them without overly doing them and burning them. So remember when I said that there was a trick that restaurants use when they get the Brussels sprout nice and crispy? The trick is getting the pan that they're going to be roasting in the, oh, there's a little butt there, in the oven as hot as it's going to be baking, so that when you actually put the Brussels sprouts into the pan, it's going to start cooking right away, and that's where you're going to get that sear. So let me just do just 2 more here. 1 and then 2. So that's one of the secret tricks that you want to kind of pick up from this video here, is getting the oven hot. So right now you want to set your oven, when you make it, at 450 degrees, and you want to make sure that your, oops. All right. Okay, and then you want to make sure that your baking pan is in there. So now, just very simple ingredients. Oops, so you heard that. So now my oven is set at the 450. So now I'm going to do is, now that I have my Brussels sprouts in my little bowl, I'm just going to add some extra virgin olive oil to coat them up. I use pink Himalayan sea salt, because pink Himalayan sea salt has 83 trace minerals in it. But you can use kosher salt, you can use sea salt. I personally don't recommend using just regular iodized table salt, simply because it doesn't have many of the salt mineral properties that you want. And then another sort of easy cooking trick is for time saver purposes, if you just get like a jar of chopped garlic, you see that there, so it's just a jar of chopped garlic. It's not obviously going to be the same as if you mince your garlic yourself, but for those of you that are trying to just save a little time in the kitchen while you're cooking, having a little bit of chopped garlic will do the trick. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get my hands in there, get it all flavored. and mix together. All right, so while I prepare the Brussels sprouts, I have a little trivia question for you. Wash my hands real quick. Which country originated Brussels sprouts? Which country originated Brussels sprouts? And you can answer the question in the little chat box. If I remember this correctly, I believe the chat box is there. Hopefully, I got that right. And let's see who has an answer. So which country originated Brussels sprouts? I'm gonna get the pan out. It's gonna be really hot. All right. So now the pan's all nice and juicy hot. You kind of already hear that sizzle. I'm just gonna try to put the Brussels sprouts as carefully down as I possibly can so that surface area is going to be cooked and coated. All right. Now I'm going to put it back in the oven. And I'm going to try to set my timer for 30 minutes. But I'll for sure check on it in the next 15 minutes. And we'll see how we're doing. Okay, all right. So we have a few guesses. All right. Is it a European country? Yes, it is. We have one guess, Italy. So Italy is a good guess, but it is not, unfortunately, the answer. So if you think about Brussels sprouts, you think about Brussels. So that's the clue there. So Brussels sprouts were named after the capital of Belgium for Brussels sprouts. So Brussels being the capital of Belgium, it originated actually from Belgium. They found it as early as the 1200s. Can you believe that? Them cooking Brussels sprouts for that long. And only today we're actually learning how to prepare it as much as we like to eat it. I'm sure they figured out other ways. There are actually multiple ways to have Brussels sprouts. You know, you could steam it. You could get a grater and grate it and put it into salads. We talked about fermentation earlier a couple of weeks ago, and you could ferment the Brussels sprouts. So same thing. If you get this finely chopped and you squeeze it and you add 2% salt and you put it into a jar, that will also activate the fermentation process. So you can have fermented Brussels sprouts, which I'm sure would be good. I've never made it myself, but I'm sure someone has. All right, so while our Brussels sprouts are being roasted in the oven, I'm going to show you just two simple, well, actually three toppings that we're going to be using after our Brussels sprouts have been cooked and roasted in the oven. It's an apple and they're walnuts. So having varying levels and flavors to your food not only enhances the flavor profile, but it also enhances the nutrient density of the Brussels sprout. So Brussels sprouts have tremendous amount of health benefits. They have vitamins C, vitamins K, they have folate, they have manganese, vitamin B6, fiber, iron, vitamin B2. So vegetables just in general, they are nature's multivitamin and multi-mineral. So you're never just going to get like one thing out of, in this case, Brussels sprouts. You're going to get multiple things. So all the vitamins that I listed, the vitamins, C and K and B12 and B2, as well as the minerals of manganese, folate, iron. All of these are just part of sort of nature's abundance in vegetables that give us our nutrients. And what all of those things do for us, they They help with bone health. They help with skin health. They help improve digestion. They reduce oxidation. They aid our immune system, which is what we're all looking for these days, and just beyond what we're working on now. So when we add other things to our food, into our flavor profile, it not only enhances the taste, but it also helps with other things that our body needs. So what we're going to be adding to our Brussels sprouts are going to be the walnuts, as I mentioned, as well as an apple. So all I'm going to be doing, let's hopefully I can do this again without showing you the. All right, so let's see here. All right, I'm going to be, all I'm doing is just like chopping up some walnuts. So just chopping up some nuts. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you can actually take this and toast it. And how you toast your nuts are you just put it into a frying pan and without any oil, and just let it brown. But for our purposes today, we're just going to keep it simple and just chop it up, just so you can see that you don't need to be, as complicated as it needs to be. You can just simply take a good knife. And same with our little apple here. We're just going to cut up some apple and add a little bit more flavor, as well as the nutrients that go into our Brussels sprouts, with the omega-3s that come in from our walnuts, as well as all of the fiber and the minerals that come into our apples. So that's going to be sitting off to the side right there. And there we go. All right. So now that we have our Brussels sprouts cooking in the oven, I have about 24 minutes left of there before I check on it. Now what I'm going to show you is another way to cook your Brussels sprouts, and this is through your stovetop. Now, I love my cast iron skillet. It's probably one of the most used tools that I have in my kitchen, other than my trusty chef's knife. And why I love cast iron skillet is because it cooks things like really well. It doesn't give off a lot of the toxins that are in things that are made of really poor cookware. And it's good enough for our grandmothers. It's good enough for us. So what I'm going to be doing is turning on my stove, and I'm trying to get my cast iron pretty hot. And I'm going to be adding just a little bit of my olive oil, because I already have had lots of flavoring that's going in on my cast iron. Now this is going to be the non-veggie recipe, because we're going to be adding bacon into our Brussels sprouts here. So once again, as I chat with you, I'm just going to be cutting up some of my Brussels sprouts to get it ready for the cast iron skillet. So once again, it's the same process. You're simply just cutting up the Brussels sprouts and putting them off to the side. And I'm going to show you what to do with all of our leaves here, because they make an excellent topper. And for those that want to get a little fancy, you can simply add that to varying levels of dishes. You can add it to other meals that you have, or you can just eat them as like little Brussels sprout chips. They are absolutely delicious. So while I'm doing this, why don't folks share with me in the chat box how they have prepared their Brussels sprouts in the past, or if they have like a memory of their Brussels sprouts from their childhood, and whether it was a good memory, a bad memory. Has anyone actually grown Brussels sprouts before with themselves? So how they grow is like this big stalk, and then these little cabbages come off to the side, and it's quite interesting. You can actually buy the stalk and use that as your own source to get the Brussels sprouts out of it. It's actually quite good because when you buy it with the stalk and all the Brussels sprouts are still attached to it, the Brussels sprout is actually still getting lots of nutrients from the stalk. So it's actually getting it pretty as nutrient dense as you possibly can. But if you just get in the bag, you know, that works too for now. But if you want to buy off the stalk, then that's awesome. All right, let's see. All right, so we had some comments here about how the other folks like the Brussels sprouts. All right, so Sue says, I like to make sliced raw sprouts with Parmesan, walnuts, and a fancy Dijon mustard dressing in the salad. Oh, that does sound delicious. Oh, all right. Well, next time we're all together, we've got to share our Brussels sprout recipes. All right, so now as folks can see, I got my pan pretty hot. It's smoking, which means it's ready to go. So now all I'm going to be doing is adding my Brussels sprouts below, downwards. I can see it popping. I'll bring the camera over there in a minute. Oh. And a big thing about cooking your Brussels sprouts on the stovetop is you want to make sure that after they're washed. Okay, so after they're washed, that you dry them very, very well, because if you're going to be cooking them and they have that water on it, it's going to create that splash. So like water and oil, hot, do not necessarily mix well when it comes to cooking. You've got a lot of that splash off. So make sure that they are dried extremely well before you cook them. So I had a couple of Brussels sprouts left over here, and I'm just going to let that go. So as you can see, I just cut them up. Oh, we had another one. They're really good roasted with tomatoes. Oh yeah, that's another good way to use both the Brussels sprouts and tomatoes and add additional flavor profiles to it. Of course, it sounds really good. All right. So now I have simply cut the Brussels sprouts. I didn't season them. I simply just put them face down onto the skillet, letting them cook and oxidize. So for those that have like cooked steaks before in the past, like this is like kind of the same process as like you're just searing the steak or searing the Brussels sprout and letting that like brown sort of happen. Let me see if I can kind of show you kind of closer look. Closer look here. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm just going to put up some more lights. All right. So there we go. We got it cooking. Now we're going to make sure that I don't burn it up. All right. So now I'm just going to check the bottom. Oh, that looks delicious. Okay. So see that? Now I'm just going to flip it over and let the other side cook. It's like fighting me here. Typically, you would want a splash guard, but I don't think I have one. So it's just going to be me versus the pan right now. All right. So now that's all getting ready to go. Now, remember my bowl that I had with the Brussels sprouts and the garlic and the salt. So I'm going to still use this bowl because it still has all of the flavors that I would want, like the garlic, the salt, and the oil. And I'm just going to, once they're done, put the Brussels sprouts into this bowl and then add a little bit more of the pink Himalayan sea salt and the cracked pepper, and then mix that all together. And that's going to be the flavor profile for the Brussels sprouts alone. And then I'm going to show you the next ingredients that I'm going to be adding into it. All right, so now that's done. All right, so now I'm just going to take my Brussels sprouts and add it to the bowl. So that's a pretty simple recipe, right? All you have to do is really just like kind of fry them up with a good high heat oil that you have. Oh, it smells so good. And I'm just gonna add my salt and my pepper. And then this is the extra bacon that I had from my weekend. And I'm just going to simply just throw that on there and let that bacon cook. Now there's two steps that you can actually follow. Oh, I put my little fan on, so I try to talk closer. So there's two steps that you can actually follow when cooking the Brussels sprouts and doing a bacon topping. Is one, my pan was already pre-seasoned and ready to go, so I could either cook the bacon before or after. So I'm cooking it after because I've already had enough flavor and enough fat in the pan. So while that's happening, you can add a little bit more of the salt and the pepper. I'm going to toss that in. All together. Look at that. We're doing good here. All right, we're going to get our bacon nice and crispy. And this is where like having the right tools in your kitchen like really come into play, into handy. So I have a pair of kitchen shears, which I just love for like just cutting up things like, well, in this case, we're going to be cutting up like the bacon into little bits and adding it into a bowl. So it's just a really great, thing to have. So if you don't necessarily have kitchen shears, then you can of course use your knife against the cutting board. But it's actually a pretty good investment to just kind of have around you. All right, so now that I have the bacon, I'm simply just going to be cutting it up and doing little bacon chops. Adding that in, letting that grease go. And then last one. Oh, let me hold it higher. All right. Put a little pan off. Okay. And then we simply just toss it up. So this is the first dish because it was easier to make with the oven or with the stove, and very good. Okay. Now we're going to check on. Now we're going to check on our oven roasted Brussels sprouts and see how we're doing. All right. So let's see if I can kind of get this camera angle right. Bear with me. All right. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Okay, that looks great. So that was about 20 minutes that I had in my oven. So for purposes of our show today, you can kind of tell when it's ready for you. So this is going to be ready for me. So now I'm going to get a little plate. All right. So now, so simply like this step alone is what you can do just to have roasted Brussels sprouts. So it's oven at 450. Make sure that the rack was baking tray was in the oven. It was nice and hot, and you like seared it. So that's ready to go. But we're not done for ourselves yet. We're simply going to be adding the top walnuts. Remember our little apples. We're going to add that. And then if you want to get even fancier, simply just adding a little bit of balsamic vinaigrette, which I think I have in my fridge. Hold on. I don't. That's embarrassing. All right. Anyway, so you can add a little bit of balsamic vinegar, more little olive oil if you want, but very good too. All right. Well, I hope you guys. Hello again. All right. So we had our pan fried Brussels sprouts, which you added like the bacon as far as our topping, which took about 10 minutes to make, and then we had our oven roasted Brussels sprouts, which took about 20 and 30 minutes to make, depending on how crispy you want your Brussels sprouts. So pretty simple recipe. Prepare Brussels sprouts pretty easily. I hope that kind of gives you some good tools and some good knowledge to just continue to like experiment with yourself in the kitchen. You know, like knowing that it's always an evolving process, depending on your cooking style and how much time you have and how much you want to continue to learn. Totally available to you. So that's my time for today. I really appreciate all of your effort. Just a couple of announcements. So this week, once again, on Wednesdays, we have Gardening with Hope at 1 o'clock. And then on Fridays at 1 p.m., we have Sue, who does story time. Last week, she did some great stories that she always incorporates some jokes too, which is always like hilarious. And then we also have our upcoming seedling sale coming up in May. So stay tuned to our website. newtoncommunityfarm.org. Just for more details, it's going to be an online process. We're just working out the varying levels of logistics to it, but we are serving you guys as much as you possibly can with this content, with our farm, with us. So thank you so much for supporting us, for watching our channel, for subscribing, and being there with us. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and look forward to next Monday. Take care. Goodbye.